this is our day. Haul away, drift away.
My family's fished withy pots out of Sennen Cove many years ago. They used to make and produce withy pots as well for mainly sale into the Isles of Scilly, where there's obviously a shortage of withies to be able to make them with. So they used to sell them to W. Harvey and Sons, which is a fish merchant down at Newlyn, and then they used to be resold on again to other parts. So as well as making them for themselves, they used to make them for other people too. So my father, uncle and grandfather all used to make withy pots as a necessity to obviously go fishing with, mainly. It was the only type of fishing that was available to them down here, that and pilchard driving, which was more of a winter time thing. So they used to get quite a bit of their income from catching lobsters and crawfish and crabs with the withy pots. So the style of pot they used to make, I'm not 100%, seeing I was only around 5, 6 or 7 years old when they used to produce them, so I wasn't really into the technical sort of style of pot they were doing. Mainly because if you needed to spend time and see your father, that was what you would do. You would go where he was working, sort of thing. I always remember him kind of looking at other people's pots that were made previous to, and he used to shake his head a bit because the bottoming out of the pot, which another chap, Alfred Nicholas, used to fish my father and my uncle. When my grandfather retired, he used to do the bottoms of them, and they were put together really sort of tough and sturdy because obviously the tide and the weather you see on Land's End Peninsula is a lot worse than what you would have on the south coast, perhaps. So yeah, if he had seen a withy pot somewhere else, he would look at it and shake his head and go, that bottom wouldn't last 5 minutes where we are. So they used to make withy pots, obviously out of willow. Everybody just calls them withies down here. So funny story about that. A thing about Sennen Covers, a lot of them used to stammer and stutter years ago. It was like they used to run through the village. And lots of them couldn't say withies, so they ended up calling them sticks instead. Just different kind of sort of cover stuff that goes on there. They used to basically go around the local farmers, anybody with bog, marsh, whatever, which is no good for cultivation or animals. They used to do a bit of bartering sort of thing. They used to take a bit of fish, and then they used to go there in the bogs and sort of cultivate them. Cut the big ones down so the small ones grew up, and plant them as you were going as well. Every time you cut, I used to go cut in with them and generally cut my hands and get dragged away to the local house wherever we were to get plasters, which was always an annoyance to my father. Yeah, so you'd always grab the withy and cut up with a knife, never down. That was harmful to the plant. And every time you cut one bush, the last stick it in the mud beside you, so another one grew up. And then it'd have different ages, different parts of it were different ages of stick, so withy. So you get the bigger ones for the bars and the smaller ones for the weaving. And so they used to go far and wide because obviously the bigger sticks take a bit longer to cultivate and things, but anywhere there was a damp patch of boggy marsh, they would sort of eye it up and then go and have a chat with a farmer and see if they could do a deal. with the pots I can remember them making, they used to have a couple of stands, and my father and my uncle used to be making the frames that bent over and tied around at the bottom, and then in and out with the weaving and stuff. And then, like I said earlier, Alfred used to be the man that used to make the bottoms. That was his part of it. But they just used, because they all worked on the boat together, that was their kind of poor weather job, shall we say. So when it's poor weather and you can't go see, they'll used to turn into that and make a few quid. Not a lot, I'm afraid. Some years I think they used to make 50 or 60 quid each out of doing that. So there's a lot of hard labour. It looks really hard on your hands. Obviously I've never done it, but just the turning and the twisting and working of the withies looks really, really tough work. So the distance they used to travel years ago, and it used to be horse and cart, obviously, and I mean they used to go as far as Truro, which was a day's to get there and back, I should think, without even cutting withies and stuff afterwards. Stories of sort of icy mornings with huge bales of sort of withies walking out of unfirm ground and stuff. It just seems like really, really tough going, really tough going. So I mean, you won't be able to see it on camera, but that bank behind you used to come out as far as the fencing, and then the withies they used to cut used to be about a line here, and they just used to bank up all over. So it was lorry loads, but they only had a V-tub pickup, so they used to carry as much as they could at the time. Great fun for bows and arrows when you're a kid. Great fun. In my memory, my father and uncle and Alfred were the only ones left making them at that time. I think there was some maybe smaller boats in Sennen Cove at the time that used to make them just for themselves. But I don't remember a great pile of them being made outside of that. Like I said, I was only young, so there was a couple of brothers at the top of the hill, John and Henry Yards. They used to do a few with their father Billard. They used to make quite a few pots and work them as a family sort of thing. Same as mine down at the Cove. So there's no need to make withy pots anymore. Not down at Sennen. Everything's been taken over by the modern style of pot. So nobody I know still makes withy pots. There's only a few left around, I think. So me and my brother was, this is before COVID, we were just about to embark on a course as an old chap in Mullion. I think he charges you something like £50 each to come and make yourself a withy pot, which, you know, for old time's sake, me and my brother said, right, we'll get on that. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to get to him yet, and he's getting older. So we need to get on that. Because fishing is dependent on weather and stuff, the other sort of jobs my family did to make ends meet, shall we say, they used to take in visitors, bed and breakfast, which turned into latterly holiday lets. They also used to do the run to the longships for Trinity Lighthouse. So they used to carry the lighthouse keepers in and out from Sennen and take the supplies to and fro as well, which I think my grandfather said the wages aren't much, but the benefits are okay. That's all I'll say about that. From what I understand, Sennen was Sennen Cove. It's not Sennen, it's Sennen Cove we're talking about. lots of families sort of were very insular and kept themselves to themselves, and when people sort of crossed streams every now and again, it generally ended up in a fallout. Even brothers. There's one story of years ago where they were pulling their boat up the slip and they fell out over something, and the boat was left there, and then about 6 months later somebody pulled it up to the wharf and it was left there until it was rotten, and they went to sea with other people on other boats rather than go sea together because of an argument. So stubbornness, if you see my children, you know where stubbornness comes from. It's Sennen Cove. Funny fishing stories generally involve things that can't be said on camera, I'm afraid. Most stories that make you laugh or smile generally involve close calls. Run down by coasters in the fog, or really poor weather. Times you get hurt, and generally when you hurt yourself on a fishing boat, everybody's first reaction is laughing. And then they say, do we need to take you in? Are you going to ruin our day's work? So funny stories, yeah, not so many of them. Fishing is, I think it's got to be kind of in your blood. If you're doing it for a wage, and the money part, it can be really tough. So I started out young with a rowing boat down in Sennen Cove with my brother, just catching fish, just messing about in boats really. Rock pooling and all the stuff that came very natural to me. So you just ended up at the end of the summer looking very tanned and basically spending all your time on the beach or in punts. And then I went through school, got to about 16, left school, and I was taking a sabbatical for a few months with my friends because they all went to college. I had no intention of going to college, and we were doing what 16-year-old boys did, which involved for me earning a bit of money with a friend of mine down at St Ives Mackerelin, which was cool, beer money, ideal. And I come in at 10:30 one evening after being at St Ives Mackerelin all day, and I opened the door to my father, who looked at me and said, "Where the hell have you been?" I said, "Well, you know where I've been, Mackerelin." And he said, "Well, your uncle's fired the crew. You start at 4:30 tomorrow morning." And that was 16 and a half, I think. Now I'm 52. So that's basically how it started. But it was always something I was going to do. Couldn't see any other sort of career. I've tried a few things. I've done a few things when weather's been poor, money's been tight. They're rubbish compared to fishing, I'm afraid. Fishing is it's good money. It's good money. It's constant. It's constant. My mind never stops thinking about step ahead, step ahead. I liken it to playing snooker. If you watch good snooker players, they are 4 or 5 shots ahead of where they want to leave to be in the right position. So I've got to be doing the same, which involves tides, time, weather, crew, and then you've got to constantly keep upkeep of boats, which is it's just like having a very needy child. They're constantly breaking with expensive everything to replace marine. They just double the price before we even start. So they fished out of Sennen in a 25-footer, Cornwall built. The problem with fishing out of Sennen, it's limited time. So summer months are fine, spring, autumn okay, winter time not so good. Shellfish kind of hibernate through the winter, so that's one of your options that you can't fish for anymore. And obviously if you get caught in storms with your gear out, it'll get smashed up, especially withy pots used to. They were notorious for moving around on the seabed when there was like ground sea and stuff. So my uncle and father made the move of getting a bigger boat and going fishing out in Ealing, which is 12 months a year option. They had a boat built, first girl Pamela, she was called. It's named after my eldest cousin, my uncle's eldest daughter. And when that one started getting a bit old, they then jumped from a wood one to a fiberglass one, which is named the same thing, which I still fish now. So, and again, it's constant upkeep with not engine replacements, but engine recons, reglassed, new steering. It's, yeah, continuous. Pros and cons, withy pots and new pots. Withy pots just haven't got a place really, not in modern fishing, not at all. Too labour intensive to make. They won't last more than a season because they rot out. And you just, hobby fishing maybe, you could have a go with them just to play, but I mean they were even superseded in between withies and the iron pots we use now with Frenchman's pots, which are the barrel shaped ones with made out of the wooden laths. Even they, with their flimsy construction, were easier to make, easier to replace, and fished a little bit faster. I think I can remember Father saying. So unfortunately, withy pots is just hobby, and things people like to just keep going along, because I guess if you don't keep it going along, the art will be lost forever, won't it? So if you watch Giant Lobster Hunters, I think it's on Discovery. So they're crayfishing down in Tasmania, New Zealand, South Island, and you see some of them working inkwells, iron inkwells, netted, and other ones we work in withy pots still, because they reckon they go up over the side. So, and they do appreciate, we don't catch very many crayfish in modern pots. So in trying, I guess if somebody wanted to try for crayfish, they could go back to a withy pot, but I'd probably suggest that you'd try the Frenchman's first, because there's a lot less investment. So we mainly use soft eyes, which is what I'm sitting on, and parlour pots, which are pretty much the same, but they've got a bucket mouth, which is the same sort of mouths as withy pots used to have, obviously made of plastic, not withies. The advantages with using them is I've got some pots that are like 12 years old. If you look after them, they'll go on for a long time. Initial investments, disadvantages are 100 quid each. And then you have the soft eyes, which are a little bit of an upgrade because they hold bait longer. They got bait bags in them instead of your elastic pulls, which you jam the bait on. So the bait will stay in them long, and they will fish longer. So that's the two types of pots we really use. So within the traps that are placed in new pots, like netted funnels, plastic mouths, generally when the pot is set, the fish that go in are there until you go and get them again. So within 4 or 5 days sometimes, if the weather's poor and you can't get out, you go there and your catch is still sitting in the pot waiting for you. As opposed to a withy pot, you go in maybe a day and a half, and he's hopping out and going somewhere else again. So, I mean, the advantage in that, with a withy pot, they used to have them twice a day. once in the morning, come in for breakfast or whatever, and go out after dinner, ale them again. Sometimes you used to have more in the afternoon than they did in the morning ale, sort of the overnight lie. So that, being able to fish faster is okay, but you would only be able to work, say, a couple hundred a day, 300 a day. And I mean, with modern winches pulling 1.5 ton, 2 ton, you'd probably rip them apart anyway. As opposed to parlour pots or soft eyes. I mean, we've got about 1,000. So can you imagine making 1,000 withy pots every year? You wouldn't have no hands left. Not sure it's going to come commercially viable, so I'm not sure that question's much. I don't know if that question's much use, because crayfish have come back over the last few years, which we've already highlighted that they catch crayfish better, but they were superseded originally by nets. So you could have your pots, and again the same thing, 2 days they're gone out again. And if you just laid a net out there instead to catch your crayfish, they'll stay there till you come back, because they're tangled up, obviously. So nets superseded them, and there's not really a gap to come back for, really. Making withy pots definitely in Cornwall should be something, maybe courses, but you're going to have to be quick, because the people that make them are getting old, and you don't want a craft to be passed on through films or TV or whatever, or out of a book. You need to be hands-on with it, and within that you'll get people who make them that wouldn't stand being chucked in the sea and pulled out again. So you need to get the ones that can still make them properly. Just to be, lots of things have gone from around the area that I can remember when I was a kid, and then the generation before, and all this business. Loads of things just sort of slipped quietly into the past. It'd be nice if withy pots probably could carry on a little bit, and just, like I say, once a generation has gone out of the system, you'll never get that back again, and you'd only be trying to put together what you think it should be, and it's not the same thing.
Haul away, drift away, the Jewel calls, this is our day. Haul away, drift away, on the Mayflower